The mahogany conference table gleamed under the crystal chandelier as Richard Sterling paced frantically across the marble floor of Peninsula Grand Hotel's executive suite. His Italian leather shoes clicked against the pristine surface with each nervous step, sweat beading on his forehead despite the air conditioning humming at a comfortable 72 degrees. The weight of $500 million pressed down on his shoulders like a lead blanket. "Listen up, everyone!" Sterling barked to the assembled staff, crowding into the opulent meeting room. CEO Li Wei from Li Wei Industries lands in exactly 2 hours. This is the biggest deal in Peninsula's history. Everything must be absolutely perfect. Maya Johnson stood at the back of the group, her pressed housekeeping uniform crisp and spotless. At 35, she carried herself with quiet dignity that seemed to contradict her position as a room cleaning associate. Her intelligent brown eyes took in every detail of Sterling's mounting panic, noting how his voice pitched higher with each sentence. "All housekeeping staff must clear the 15th floor immediately after your duties are complete," Sterling continued, his gaze sweeping over the crowd before landing pointedly on Maya. "And I mean everyone. We cannot have any inappropriate personnel visible when our distinguished guests arrive." The words hung in the air like poison gas. Maya felt the familiar sting of humiliation burn in her chest, but her expression remained neutral. She had learned long ago that reacting only made things worse. "Specifically," Sterling's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper, "people like you, Johnson, need to understand that this deal depends on image. Our Chinese investors expect a certain presentation. You simply don't fit the aesthetic we're trying to convey." Maya's fingers tightened around her cleaning supplies cart handle. 3 years of this. 3 years of being treated like she was invisible, or worse, like she was a liability to be hidden away whenever important people visited. "Sir," ventured Jessica, the front desk supervisor, "what about translation services? Do we have someone who speaks Mandarin?" Sterling's face went pale. "Our contracted interpreter called in sick this morning. Food poisoning." He fumbled with his smartphone, frantically scrolling through translator apps. "We'll make do with technology. How hard can it be?" Maya bit her tongue to keep from speaking. She had read Li Wei Industries' quarterly reports in their original Chinese. She understood every nuance of their business model, their expansion strategies, their cultural values. But she was just the help. Her opinion didn't matter. "Remember," Sterling concluded, "this deal makes or breaks Peninsula's expansion into the Asian market. Failure is not an option. Now, everyone to your positions, and housekeeping, disappear." As the staff dispersed, Maya pushed her cart toward the service elevator. The familiar weight of being overlooked settled on her shoulders like an old, unwelcome friend. She had 2 master's degrees hanging on her apartment wall, but here she was, being ordered to hide because her presence might offend a potential business partner. The elevator doors closed with a soft ding, and Maya caught her reflection in the polished steel. She saw what Sterling saw, a black woman in a maid's uniform. What he failed to see was the brilliant mind behind those eyes, the fluent Mandarin speaker who had grown up listening to her Chinese grandmother's stories, the international relations expert who understood global business better than anyone in that conference room. But today, like every other day for the past 3 years, she would remain invisible. 6 hours earlier, Peninsula Grand Hotel had hummed with the choreographed precision of a Broadway production. Maya arrived for her 5:30 morning shift to find the building transformed into what could only be described as a stage set designed to impress. The transformation was remarkable and disturbing in equal measure. Sterling had hired an external styling team overnight to perfectize the front desk staff. Maya watched from the service corridor as a parade of consultants fussed over the reception team's appearance, adjusting makeup, pressing uniforms to military precision, and coaching pronunciation of basic hospitality phrases. "Remember, smell, but don't be too familiar," one consultant instructed the front desk team. Professional distance is key with Asian business clients. Maya shook her head at the casual stereotyping, but continued her work. She had learned long ago that pointing out such things only painted a target on her back. Better to stay quiet, stay invisible, and collect her paycheck. The housekeeping team received their marching orders with military efficiency. "All guest areas on the 15th floor must be spotless by 2 p.m., announced Mrs. Henderson, the housekeeping supervisor. After that, full evacuation. Mr. Sterling's explicit instructions. Maya had worked these VIP visits before. She knew the drill. Clean everything to magazine photo perfection, then vanish as if she had never existed. The wealthy and powerful apparently preferred to imagine their luxury accommodations maintained themselves through magic rather than the hard work of actual human beings. As she arranged fresh orchids in the conference room, Maya's phone buzzed with a call from her younger sister Kaisha. Without thinking, she answered in fluent Mandarin, continuing their ongoing conversation about Shanghai stock market trends. Her sister was completing her MBA at Wharton, specializing in Asian markets, and they often discussed investment strategies and economic policy. "The semiconductor sector is showing unusual volatility," Maya said in perfect Mandarin, her northern accent flawless. "I think the trade tensions are creating artificial price fluctuations that smart investors could capitalize on." Carlos, the security guard, paused in his rounds to stare at her. "Maya, I had no idea you spoke Chinese. That sounded completely fluent." Maya smiled as she ended the call. "My grandmother immigrated from Beijing in 1952. I grew up bilingual." She arranged the orchids with practiced precision. "Plus, I have degrees in international economics and foreign relations. Languages are kind of necessary in that field." "Wait, what?" Carlos looked genuinely confused. "You have master's degrees? Then why are you working housekeeping?" The question that haunted Maya's existence. She had asked herself the same thing countless times during the past 3 years. "I've applied for management positions here repeatedly. Somehow my resume keeps getting lost in the system. HR keeps telling me I lack the right cultural fit for corporate roles." Carlos, a Mexican immigrant who had faced his own share of discrimination, understood immediately. "That's garbage, Maya. You're the smartest person in this building. You help everyone with everything. Remember when the computer system crashed last month? You fixed it faster than the IT consultants." It was true. Maya had become the unofficial problem solver for Peninsula's staff. She created Excel spreadsheets that streamlined inventory management better than the expensive software the hotel had purchased. She helped translate documents for international guests in 6 different languages. She had even written detailed analyses of the hotel's operational inefficiencies, though those reports had disappeared into the corporate void without acknowledgement. Sophia, another housekeeping team member, joined their conversation. "Girl, you wrote my performance review better than I could have myself. You should be running this place, not cleaning it." Maya's small workspace in the service area told the story of her divided existence. Tucked behind cleaning supplies sat textbooks and books on Chinese investment strategies, copies of the Financial Times in 3 languages, and a laptop perpetually open to tabs monitoring the Shanghai Stock Exchange, Belt and Road Initiative analysis, and emerging market research. The contrast was stark and deliberate. During work hours, she wore the uniform that rendered her invisible to management. But in her personal time, she was Maya Johnson, international business analyst, who could discuss global economic policy with the expertise of someone who belonged in boardrooms, not broom closets. James from IT support stopped by as Maya finished her morning tasks. "Hey, I wanted to thank you again for debugging our reservation system last week. That algorithm you suggested saved us thousands in consultant fees." "No problem," Maya replied, though they both knew she would receive no credit or compensation for her contribution. Her ideas would be implemented, her solutions would be used, but her name would remain absent from any recognition. As the morning progressed, the hotel continued its transformation. Security received special briefings about keeping certain personnel out of sight during the VIP visit. The message was clear. Hide anyone who didn't fit the carefully curated image Peninsula wanted to project to their wealthy Chinese visitors. Maya understood her role in this performance. She was the talented understudy who would never be allowed on stage, the brilliant mind hidden behind a uniform designed to make her invisible. For 3 years, she had played this part perfectly. But today would be different. Today, her silence would finally be broken. At precisely 2:15 p.m., the mahogany doors of Peninsula's grand entrance swung open to admit CEO Li Wei and his delegation. Maya watched from the service corridor as 8 impeccably dressed executives entered the marble-clad lobby, their presence commanding immediate attention from every staff member within sight. Li Wei himself cut an impressive figure. Tall and distinguished, wearing a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, he moved with the quiet confidence of someone accustomed to being the most powerful person in any room. His delegation flanked him with military precision, each member carrying leather portfolios and wearing expressions of polite but distant professionalism. Sterling rushed forward with what he clearly believed was an appropriately enthusiastic greeting. "Ni hao! Welcome to Peninsula Grand Hotel!" His pronunciation was atrocious, the tones completely wrong, making the greeting sound like a child's attempt at mimicking a foreign language. Li Wei stopped mid-stride and responded with a lengthy sentence in rapid Mandarin. Maya, listening from her hidden position, understood every word. "Thank you for hosting us today. We are very interested in discussing the investment partnership and reviewing the due diligence materials. I hope we can have productive conversations about our mutual business interests." Sterling stood frozen, his smile becoming increasingly strained as the seconds ticked by. The silence stretched uncomfortably as Li Wei waited for a response that would never come. Finally, Sterling fumbled for his smartphone and opened Google Translate, typing furiously while Li Wei and his delegation exchanged knowing glances. "Investment partnership," Sterling read from his phone screen, his voice cracking slightly. But Google Translate had mangled Li Wei's complex sentence, somehow interpreting business partnership as marriage proposal. Sterling's confusion was visible to everyone in the lobby. Li Wei frowned and spoke again, this time asking specifically about the financial documents and market analysis reports his team had requested in advance. Maya watched the disaster unfold as Sterling desperately typed into his translation app, receiving increasingly incomprehensible responses. "Duck documents?" Sterling read aloud, his face flushing red. Google Translate had somehow converted due diligence documents into something about waterfowl. Li Wei's expression darkened with each passing moment of miscommunication. The situation deteriorated rapidly. Sterling's assistant rushed forward with a hastily prepared PowerPoint presentation entirely in English that began with basic information about Peninsula's amenities. Li Wei listened politely for exactly 90 seconds before raising his hand to stop the presentation. Maya understood his whispered comment to his assistant. "These people are not serious about this partnership. They show no respect for our language or culture. This feels like a waste of time." Li Wei's assistant nodded and began gathering their materials. The body language was unmistakable. They were preparing to leave. $500 million in investment capital was about to walk out the door because Peninsula couldn't manage basic communication with their potential partners. Sterling's panic was palpable. Sweat stained his expensive shirt as he frantically called the hotel's emergency interpreter service, only to learn that no Mandarin speakers were available on such short notice. He tried gesturing, speaking louder in English, and even attempting to use hand signals to communicate, all of which served only to further frustrate the Chinese delegation. "Perhaps we should return to our previous hotel," Li Wei said to his team in Mandarin. Clearly, this organization lacks the professionalism we require for such a significant business relationship. Maya's heart raced as she watched the delegation move toward the exit. She knew exactly what they were saying, understood their frustration completely, and possessed the skills to fix this catastrophe. But she also knew her place in Peninsula's hierarchy. She was housekeeping staff. She was meant to be invisible. The internal struggle was agony. On one side lay job security, the steady paycheck that helped support her sister's education and kept her apartment rent current. On the other side lay professional integrity and the knowledge that she alone could save this deal. Li Wei reached the elevator, his hand poised over the call button. In moments, he would be gone, taking with him the largest investment opportunity in Peninsula's history. Maya closed her eyes and made her choice. She stepped out of the service corridor and into the spotlight of the marble lobby. Her footsteps echoed across the polished floor as every head turned to stare at the maid, who was violating direct orders by appearing in the presence of VIP guests. "Mr. Li," she said in perfect Mandarin, her voice carrying clearly across the suddenly silent lobby. "I sincerely apologize for this misunderstanding. Please allow me to properly welcome you to Peninsula Grand Hotel." The effect was electric. Li Wei stopped mid-stride, his eyes widening in surprise. Sterling's mouth fell open in shock. The entire delegation turned to stare at the uniformed woman who had just addressed their CEO in flawless Chinese. Maya had crossed her Rubicon. There was no going back now. The lobby fell into stunned silence as every person present processed what had just occurred. Maya stood in the center of the marble floor, her heart pounding, but her voice steady, having just shattered 3 years of imposed invisibility with a single sentence in perfect Mandarin. Li Wei recovered first, his business instincts overriding his surprise. "Your Chinese is excellent," he replied in Mandarin, his tone shifting from frustrated to intrigued. "Where did you learn to speak so fluently?" "I studied international economics with a focus on Chinese markets," Maya answered, maintaining the formal politeness that Chinese business culture demanded. "My grandmother immigrated from Beijing, so I grew up speaking both languages at home." Sterling finally found his voice, though it came out as a strangled whisper. "Maya, what are you doing here? I specifically instructed all housekeeping staff to clear this area immediately after completing their duties." Maya ignored him completely, keeping her attention focused on Li Wei. Years of suppressed professional instincts surged to the surface as she seized this moment of opportunity. "Mr. Li, I understand there has been some confusion about your visit today. I would be happy to facilitate proper communication between your team and our management." Li Wei studied her carefully, his experienced businessman's eye taking in the contradiction between her uniform and her obvious education. "You work as housekeeping staff here?" he asked in Mandarin. "Yes, sir, for the past 3 years." Maya's response was simple and dignified, without any trace of bitterness or self-pity. Li Wei's expression hardened as he turned to Sterling. "This woman speaks better Mandarin than most of my American business contacts, and you have her cleaning rooms?" Sterling stammered. "Well, sir, everyone has to start somewhere in the hospitality industry." "Start somewhere?" Li Wei's voice carried the edge of controlled anger. "How long has she worked here?" 3 years. Sterling admitted reluctantly. 3 years. Li Wei repeated slowly, switching to English so everyone could understand. And in 3 years, no one recognized her language skills, her education. The delegation members exchanged glances, their expressions reflecting their CEO's growing disapproval of Peninsula's management practices. Maya remained silent, allowing the implications of the situation to speak for themselves. Li Wei continued his inquiry, addressing Maya directly but speaking in English. "Miss Johnson, Maya Johnson. Miss Johnson, what is your educational background?" Maya straightened her shoulders, feeling for the first time in years that her qualifications actually mattered to someone in a position of authority. I have a bachelor's degree in international economics from Georgetown University and a master's degree in international relations from Johns Hopkins. I also completed coursework toward an MBA with a focus on Asian markets. The silence that followed was deafening. Sterling's face had gone pale, while several other Peninsula employees stared in shock. Carlos and Sophia, who had witnessed this conversation from the edges of the lobby, smiled with pride and vindication. Li Wei nodded slowly, processing this information. And despite these qualifications, Peninsula employs you as housekeeping staff. Yes, sir. Li Wei turned back to Sterling, his tone icy. Mr. Sterling, I think we need to have a very serious conversation about how your organization manages human resources. But first, I would like to speak with Miss Johnson about the business matters that brought us here today. Sterling opened his mouth to object, but Li Wei's raised hand silenced him immediately. Miss Johnson, are you familiar with Li Wei Industries and our business operations? Maya felt a surge of excitement she hadn't experienced in years. Finally, someone was asking her about her actual area of expertise. Yes, sir. I follow your company closely. Li Wei Industries is a leader in renewable energy technology, particularly wind and solar power infrastructure. Your most recent quarterly report showed 23% growth in your wind power division, and you're currently expanding operations into Southeast Asian markets. Li Wei's eyebrows rose in genuine surprise. You read our quarterly reports? I read them in the original Chinese. Maya replied matter-of-factly. I find the financial analysis sections particularly insightful, especially your projections for the Belt and Road Initiative impact on regional energy markets. For the first time since entering the hotel, Li Wei smiled. Miss Johnson, I think you and I have a great deal to discuss. Shall we proceed to the conference room? As Maya walked beside Li Wei toward the elevators, she caught sight of Sterling's reflection in the polished marble. The man who had spent 3 years treating her as invisible now watched helplessly as his biggest business opportunity unfolded entirely without him. The elevator doors closed, and Maya found herself rising not just to the 15th floor, but toward a future she had only dared to dream about during her invisible years at Peninsula Grand Hotel. The conference room that Maya had cleaned to perfection just hours earlier now served as the stage for the most important conversation of her professional life. Li Wei gestured for her to take a seat at the mahogany table, while his delegation arranged themselves with the practiced efficiency of executives accustomed to high-stakes negotiations. Sterling hovered near the doorway, clearly uncertain whether he should stay or leave. Li Wei resolved his dilemma immediately. Mr. Sterling, please have someone bring tea and then give us privacy. Miss Johnson and I have business to discuss. The dismissal was polite, but absolute. Sterling had no choice but to comply, though his reluctance was obvious as he backed out of the room, closing the heavy doors behind him. Li Wei leaned forward slightly, his full attention focused on Maya. Miss Johnson, I am very curious about your thoughts on Chinese investment in the American market. What do you see as the primary challenges? Maya took a deep breath, drawing on years of accumulated knowledge and analysis. The biggest challenge is mutual misunderstanding, Mr. Li. American businesses often fail in China because they don't understand Guangxi culture. They focus on quick profits instead of relationship building. Similarly, Chinese investments in America sometimes struggle because of regulatory unpredictability and cultural resistance. Interesting perspective, Li Wei nodded. Can you elaborate on the regulatory challenges? Certainly. The Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States has become increasingly scrutinizing of Chinese acquisitions, particularly in technology and infrastructure sectors. But there are still significant opportunities in renewable energy, which aligns perfectly with Li Wei Industries' core competencies. Li Wei's assistant discreetly took notes as Maya continued. The key is transparent communication and demonstrating how Chinese investment benefits American workers and communities. When investments are positioned as job creation and technological advancement rather than foreign acquisition, public perception shifts dramatically. You've clearly given this considerable thought. Li Wei observed. What about specific sectors? Where do you see the greatest potential for successful partnerships? Maya felt her confidence growing with each exchange. This was the conversation she had prepared for her entire career, the expertise she had developed while invisible to Peninsula's management. Green energy infrastructure presents the most promising opportunities. American cities are under pressure to reduce carbon emissions, but they lack the manufacturing capacity and technological expertise that Chinese companies like yours have developed. It's a perfect complementary relationship. Li Wei's delegation exchanged impressed glances. One of his senior advisors asked, "What about the trade tensions? How do those impact investment strategies?" "Short-term disruption, long-term realignment," Maya replied without hesitation. Smart investors use trade tensions as opportunities to pivot toward ASEAN manufacturing hubs. Vietnam and Thailand are becoming increasingly attractive for electronics assembly and automotive parts production. Companies that establish operations there now will be positioned advantageously when trade policies normalize. Li Wei leaned back in his chair, studying Maya with the appraising look of someone recognizing exceptional talent. "Miss Johnson, your analysis is more sophisticated than most consulting reports I receive. How did you develop such expertise while working in housekeeping?" The question was direct, but not judgmental. Maya appreciated his straightforward approach. "I never stopped learning, Mr. Li. I read financial publications in 3 languages, monitor global markets, and analyze investment trends during my personal time. Just because my current position doesn't utilize my education doesn't mean I stopped developing professionally." "That demonstrates remarkable dedication," Li Wei said quietly. "Tell me, if you were in my position, would you invest in Peninsula Grand Hotel?" Maya paused, considering the question carefully. She could give a diplomatic answer that protected her current employer, or she could provide honest professional assessment. Li Wei's expectant gaze suggested he wanted the truth. "It depends on your portfolio strategy," she said finally. "Peninsula has prime location and established brand recognition. The hotel industry fundamentals are sound. However, the management structure reveals concerning issues with talent recognition and cultural competency. Any investor should question whether leadership can maximize human capital effectively." Li Wei smiled broadly for the first time. "A diplomatic but honest assessment. I appreciate your frankness." The conversation continued for another hour, ranging across topics from renewable energy policy to Southeast Asian market dynamics. Maya found herself discussing complex economic theories with the fluency and confidence she had always possessed, but never been allowed to demonstrate. As the formal discussion wound down, Li Wei asked the question that would change everything. "Miss Johnson, what are your career aspirations? Surely you don't intend to remain in housekeeping indefinitely?" Maya met his gaze directly. "I've applied repeatedly for management positions here at Peninsula. I've been told consistently that my qualifications don't align with their corporate culture, so I continue to work where I'm employed while waiting for the right opportunity to demonstrate my capabilities." Li Wei was quiet for a long moment, then reached into his briefcase and withdrew a business card. The card was elegant, embossed with gold lettering on heavy stock paper. "Miss Johnson, Li Wei Industries is expanding our American operations. We need a cultural bridge director to oversee our U.S. partnerships and Southeast Asian expansion communication. The position requires exactly your combination of skills: language fluency, cultural understanding, and strategic analysis." Maya stared at the card, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. "The salary would be $180,000 annually, plus equity participation in our American subsidiary," Li Wei continued. "Would you be interested in discussing this opportunity?" The conference room felt like it was spinning. After 3 years of invisibility, of having her talents dismissed and her potential ignored, someone was offering her the career she had always dreamed of. "Mr. Li?" Maya said carefully. I would be very interested in that conversation. Li Wei stood and extended his hand. Excellent. My HR director will contact you tomorrow morning to begin the process. I believe this partnership will benefit both Li Wei Industries and your own professional development. As they shook hands, Maya realized that her life had just changed forever. The maid who spoke Mandarin was about to become an international business executive. The conference room doors opened to reveal Sterling pacing anxiously in the hallway, his expensive suit wrinkled from nervous perspiration. Behind him, a small crowd of Peninsula staff had gathered, drawn by curiosity about the lengthy closed-door meeting between their CEO and the housekeeping employee who had shocked everyone with her linguistic abilities. Li Wei emerged first, his expression serious and contemplative. Maya followed, carrying herself with a quiet dignity that seemed transformed from just hours earlier. The business card in her hand felt like a golden ticket to a future she had only imagined. Sterling rushed forward, his voice pitched higher than normal. Mr. Li, I hope Miss Johnson was able to provide some assistance with your questions. Now, shall we proceed with our formal presentation about Peninsula's investment opportunities? Li Wei fixed Sterling with a steady gaze that made the hotel manager visibly uncomfortable. Mr. Sterling, Miss Johnson and I have had a very illuminating conversation, but now I have some questions for you. Of course, sir. I'm at your complete disposal. How long has Miss Johnson worked at Peninsula Grand Hotel? Sterling glanced nervously at Maya, then back at Li Wei. Approximately 3 years, sir. 3 years. Li Wei repeated slowly. And during that time, what positions has she held? She's been a valued member of our housekeeping team. Housekeeping, Li Wei interrupted. For 3 years, despite having master's degrees in international economics and international relations. Sterling's face went pale. Well, sir, career advancement takes time in the hospitality industry. Mr. Sterling, Li Wei's voice carried the controlled edge of barely restrained anger. Miss Johnson speaks fluent Mandarin, understands Chinese business culture better than most American executives I work with, and demonstrates sophisticated knowledge of international markets. Yet for 3 years, you have had her cleaning toilets. The gathered staff exchanged glances. Carlos stepped forward from the crowd. Sir, if I may, he said respectfully to Li Wei. Maya helps everyone here. She translates documents for international guests, fixes our computer problems, writes better reports than our supervisors. We all know she's overqualified. Sophia nodded emphatically. She trained half our new staff and created inventory systems that actually work. Management just never listened. Li Wei absorbed this information with growing displeasure. So the entire staff recognizes Miss Johnson's capabilities, but management does not? Sterling stammered. Sir, I can assure you that Peninsula values all our employees. Do you? Li Wei's question cut through Sterling's platitudes like a blade. Because from where I stand, it appears that Peninsula systematically ignores talent when it doesn't fit your preconceived notions about who belongs in leadership positions. The accusation hung in the air like smoke from a fire. Sterling's mouth opened and closed without producing any coherent response. Li Wei continued his systematic dismantling of Peninsula's management philosophy. In China, we have a saying, Qian li ma chang yu, erbo le bu chang yu. It means thousandly horses are common, but people who can recognize thousandly horses are rare. Maya translated quietly for the gathered staff. Exceptional talent is everywhere, but people who can spot exceptional talent are scarce. Exactly. Li Wei nodded approvingly at Maya. Mr. Sterling, you are not Bo Le. You cannot recognize the 1,000 li horse standing directly in front of you. Sterling attempted damage control. Sir, I want to assure you that Peninsula is committed to diversity and inclusion. Committed to diversity? Li Wei's tone sharpened. You hired your most qualified employee whenever important visitors arrive because you worry about image. That is not diversity. That is discrimination dressed up in corporate language. The hotel manager's face flushed red. Several staff members couldn't suppress satisfied smiles at seeing Sterling finally confronted about his practices. Li Wei addressed the entire group. This situation makes me question Peninsula's fitness as a business partner. If your organization cannot recognize and develop the talent within your own walls, how can I trust you to manage a $500 million investment effectively? Sterling panicked visibly. Mr. Li, please, let me explain our development programs. Development programs? Li Wei's eyebrows rose. Miss Johnson has been here 3 years. What development has she received? Sterling had no answer. The silence stretched uncomfortably as everyone present understood the implications of his inability to respond. Li Wei turned to Maya. Miss Johnson, have you received any training opportunities, advancement coaching, or professional development support during your employment here? No, sir. Maya replied simply. Have you requested such opportunities? Yes, sir, multiple times. Li Wei nodded grimly. Mr. Sterling, this conversation has been very educational. It has taught me a great deal about Peninsula's corporate culture and management philosophy. Unfortunately, what I have learned makes me doubt whether this organization aligns with Li Wei Industries' values. Sterling's face went ashen as he realized the investment deal was slipping away. Sir, please, we can address any concerns. The concern, Mr. Sterling, is fundamental. You waste human potential. You judge people by appearances rather than capabilities. You maintain systems that keep talented individuals invisible. Li Wei paused, letting his words sink in. These are not operational problems that can be fixed with policy adjustments. These are character flaws that reflect core organizational values. Maya watched Sterling's world crumble in real time. The man who had spent 3 years treating her as invisible now faced the consequences of his blindness to talent. Li Wei delivered his final assessment. I will be reconsidering Peninsula's suitability as an investment target, but first, I have other business to attend to. He turned to Maya with a slight smile. Miss Johnson, shall we discuss your future? Li Wei's words hung in the conference room air like a challenge thrown down at Sterling's feet. The hotel manager stood frozen, watching helplessly as the biggest deal in Peninsula's history pivoted entirely around the woman he had ordered to remain invisible just hours earlier. Miss Johnson, Li Wei continued, reaching into his briefcase for official documents. Li Wei Industries requires a cultural bridge director for our expanding American operations. This position involves overseeing U.S.-China business partnerships, training American staff on Chinese business practices, and managing communication for our Southeast Asian expansion. Maya felt her heart racing as Li Wei outlined responsibilities that perfectly matched every skill she had developed during her years of professional exile. The role reports directly to our North American board and includes strategic planning authority for cultural integration initiatives. Sterling attempted to interrupt. Mr. Li, perhaps we should discuss Miss Johnson's current contractual obligations to Peninsula. Li Wei silenced him with a look. Mr. Sterling, I am conducting a business conversation with Miss Johnson. Please do not interrupt. The dismissal was absolute. Sterling's face reddened, but he had no choice but to step back and watch his authority evaporate in real time. Miss Johnson, Li Wei resumed, this position offers an annual salary of $180,000, plus equity participation in our American subsidiary, comprehensive health benefits, and a professional development budget of $25,000 annually. Maya's mental calculator worked frantically. $180,000 represented more than 5 times her current housekeeping salary. The professional development budget alone exceeded her current annual income. The position would be based in our new Washington, D.C. office, Li Wei continued, with regular travel to China and Southeast Asia for strategic consultations. You would lead a team of 12 professionals and manage a departmental budget of $5 million. Sterling's panic became visible as he realized the magnitude of what was happening. "Maya," he said desperately, "let's discuss this privately. Peninsula has always valued your contributions. Have you?" Maya's voice was quiet but firm. "Mr. Sterling, for 3 years I applied for every management position that opened. For 3 years you told me my qualifications didn't align with Peninsula's corporate culture. What has changed in the last 2 hours?" Sterling stammered. "Well, we've been planning to create new opportunities." "Planning?" Maya's tone carried 3 years of suppressed frustration. "When? You've had 36 months to recognize my qualifications. Today, a complete stranger needed exactly 10 minutes of conversation to understand my capabilities." Li Wei nodded approvingly. "Miss Johnson raises an excellent point. Mr. Sterling, why should she trust Peninsula's sudden interest in her career development?" Sterling attempted damage control. "We could create a new position immediately. Cultural liaison manager. We could match Mr. Li's salary offer." "Could you match respect?" Maya asked quietly. "Could you match the opportunity to use my education? Could you match 3 years of believing in my potential instead of hiding my existence?" The question left Sterling speechless. Around the room, staff members watched with a mixture of admiration and vindication as Maya finally spoke truths that had been suppressed for years. Li Wei extended his hand to Maya. "Miss Johnson, do you accept our offer?" Maya looked around the room at the faces of colleagues who had supported her, at Sterling who had marginalized her, at the luxury hotel that had treated her as invisible furniture. Then she looked at Li Wei, who had seen her potential immediately and valued it appropriately. "Mr. Li, I accept your offer with gratitude and enthusiasm." Li Wei smiled broadly. "Excellent. My HR director will contact you tomorrow morning with complete details and paperwork. Your start date will be Monday, if that works for your schedule." Maya nodded, still processing the surreal transformation of her circumstances. "Mr. Sterling, I hereby submit my resignation from Peninsula Grand Hotel, effective immediately." Sterling made one last desperate attempt. "Maya, please, let's talk about this privately. I'm sure we can work something out." "There's nothing to work out," Maya replied with quiet dignity. "You had 3 years to work something out. You chose not to. Now someone else has chosen to invest in my potential." Carlos stepped forward from the crowd of staff. "Maya, you did it. You finally showed them who you really are." Sophia clapped slowly, her applause picked up by other staff members until the conference room filled with the sound of genuine appreciation for Maya's breakthrough. James from IT called out, "Can I post about this on LinkedIn? Talent hidden in plain sight finally gets recognized." Maya smiled. "Tag Peninsula in the post. Let them explain their talent development philosophy to the world." Li Wei observed the staff response with interest. "Miss Johnson, it appears you have considerable support from your colleagues." "They're good people," Maya replied. "They saw my potential even when management didn't." Li Wei nodded thoughtfully. "That speaks well of their character and poorly of Peninsula's leadership structure." As the crowd began to disperse, Sterling stood alone, watching his biggest business opportunity and his most talented employee walk away together. For 3 years, he had been blind to the diamond hidden in his housekeeping department. Now that diamond was walking out the door, taking Li Wei Industries' investment with her. Maya gathered her personal belongings from the housekeeping supply closet, surprised by how few possessions she had accumulated during her years of invisibility. As she packed her textbooks and research materials, she reflected on the transformation that had occurred in just a few hours. This morning she had been Maya Johnson, invisible Maid. Tonight she would go home as Maya Johnson, international business executive. The woman who had been hidden was finally ready to shine. 1 month after Maya's dramatic transformation from housekeeping staff to international executive, Peninsula Grand Hotel found itself under intense scrutiny from both the business community and the general public. Maya's LinkedIn post about her experience had gone viral, accumulating over 2 million views and sparking a broader conversation about hidden talent in corporate America. The post's impact was immediate and far-reaching. Within days, Peninsula's parent company faced uncomfortable questions from shareholders about their talent development practices. The hospitality industry trade publications picked up the story, running headlines like "The Maid Who Spoke Mandarin, a case study in systemic talent waste," and "Hidden Genius, when hotels hide their best assets." Maya's new role at Li Wei Industries had begun with remarkable success. From her corner office in the company's gleaming Washington, D.C. headquarters, she oversaw cultural integration initiatives that had already improved American business partnerships by 37%. Her first quarterly report had been so impressive that Li Wei himself had flown from Shanghai to congratulate her personally. "Miss Johnson," Li Wei had said during their meeting, "your insights have prevented at least 3 major cultural misunderstandings that could have cost us millions in lost partnerships. You have exceeded every expectation." Maya's team of 12 professionals represented a diverse mix of cultural backgrounds and language skills, all united by their expertise in international business relations. The $5 million departmental budget was being deployed strategically to build bridges between American and Asian business communities. Meanwhile, Peninsula Grand Hotel struggled to recover from the public relations disaster that Maya's story had created. The hashtag talent waste began trending on social media, with other employees from various industries sharing their own stories of being overlooked and underutilized by short-sighted management. Sterling had been quietly demoted to assistant manager, replaced by Maria Rodriguez, who had previously worked at the front desk, but possessed an MBA in hospitality management that Peninsula's leadership had never bothered to discover. The parallels to Maya's situation were uncomfortably obvious. Under new management, Peninsula implemented emergency reforms designed to identify and develop hidden talent within their existing workforce. The Skills Inventory initiative required all employees to submit comprehensive resumes detailing their education, language abilities, and professional certifications. The results were staggering. Peninsula discovered that their parking attendant held an engineering degree from a prestigious university. Their night shift security guard spoke 5 languages fluently and had managed logistics operations for an international shipping company. The woman who cleaned the executive floors had a background in financial analysis and had been creating more accurate budget projections than the accounting department during her spare time. Carlos, Maya's former colleague from security, found himself promoted to operations supervisor within 2 weeks of the new talent assessment. "Maya always told us we were capable of more," he said during his first management meeting. "She just couldn't convince the old leadership to listen." Sophia transitioned from housekeeping to training director, where her organizational skills and natural leadership abilities could finally be utilized effectively. Her first initiative involved creating mentorship programs to ensure that talented employees would never again languish in positions that failed to utilize their capabilities. The transformation extended beyond individual promotions. Peninsula's new leadership instituted monthly skip-level meetings where executives met directly with front-line employees, bypassing middle management to identify emerging talent and innovative ideas. Anonymous suggestion systems encouraged employees to propose improvements without fear of retaliation. Maya's influence reached far beyond Peninsula's walls. Li Wei Industries retained her services as a consultant to help other companies identify and develop hidden talent within their organizations. Her talent archaeology methodology had already been implemented by 15 Fortune 500 companies, resulting in hundreds of employee promotions and significant improvements in organizational efficiency. The consulting work was personally satisfying for Maya because it allowed her to prevent other talented individuals from experiencing the years of frustration and invisibility that had defined her own career journey. Each promotion she facilitated, each hidden gem she helped companies discover, felt like a small victory against the systemic blindness that had once trapped her in a cycle of underutilization. Her sister Keisha, now graduated from Wharton, had joined Maya's team at Li Wei Industries as a strategic analysis specialist. Working together professionally represented the fulfillment of dreams they had discussed in Mandarin during those lunch break phone calls when Maya was still invisible to Peninsula's management. The broader impact of Maya's story continued to ripple through corporate America. Harvard Business School announced plans to develop a case study based on her experience, examining how organizational biases prevent companies from recognizing and developing internal talent. Business schools across the country began incorporating talent recognition strategies into their management curricula. Peninsula's stock price had initially declined following the negative publicity surrounding Maya's departure, but began recovering as their talent development initiatives showed measurable results. The company's new approach to human resources was being studied by other hospitality chains as a model for identifying hidden potential within existing workforces. Maya maintained relationships with her former colleagues, serving as an informal mentor for employees navigating their own career transitions. Her advice was simple but powerful. Never let others define your potential based on your current position. Your value isn't determined by your job title, it's determined by your capabilities and your commitment to developing them. The woman who had once been invisible had become a beacon of hope for countless other talented individuals who found themselves trapped in positions that failed to reflect their true abilities. Maya's transformation proved that recognition might be delayed, but talent would eventually find a way to shine. 6 months after her career change, Maya Johnson stood in front of 50 new employees of Li Wei Industries, people recruited through the Hidden Talent Initiative she initiated. They were retail workers, restaurant servers, receptionists, or maintenance workers, but they possessed degrees, skills, and experience far beyond their previous jobs. Maya recalled, "6 months ago I was cleaning toilets in hotels, not because of lack of ability, but because of lack of recognition." Talent that is not seen is like a diamond buried in the dark. She shared figures showing that American businesses lose $87 billion each year because they do not exploit the talent they have, chasing degrees and reputation instead of real ability. The stories of Carlos, from security guard to regional director, and Sophia, founder of a talent development consultancy, are proof of the spread. Maya's article has been translated into 12 languages, inspiring businesses in Europe and Asia. In front of the camera, Maya sends a universal message. Talk to people whose titles don't suggest hidden value. Ask about their background, skills, ideas. A slideshow of before and after figures shows that productivity, satisfaction, and innovation increase dramatically when businesses truly look for hidden potential. Maya concludes, "They called me the valet for 3 years, but the valet sees everything. The question is not whether talent exists, but whether you have the intelligence and courage to see it. How many Maya Johnsons are in your company that no one recognizes? What are you going to do to change that?" Her story has become a movement, challenging the mindset of recruiting and human resources management. Maya affirms, "Recognition costs nothing, but ignoring it costs everything.